Commander Alice Ward opened her eyes to darkness and pain. The emergency lights of her escape pod flickered weakly, casting red shadows across her bloodied uniform. Her head throbbed where it had struck the console during her desperate escape from the diplomatic vessel. Handshake. The mission was supposed to be simple. Make contact with the alien delegation, establish peaceful relations, return home heroes. Instead, the Imperial cruisers had appeared without warning, their weapons reducing the handshake to floating debris in seconds. Alice checked the pod's systems. Life support was failing. Communications dead. Navigation barely functional. According to the readings, she was drifting in unknown space, far from any charted human outposts. She tried not to think about her crewmates, all 147 of them, gone in an instant of fire and vacuum. This isn't how first contact was supposed to go, she whispered to herself, pressing a bandage against the gash on her forehead. A sudden jolt threw her against her restraints. The pod's sensors blared in alarm as something large engulfed the tiny craft. Alice reached for the emergency pistol stored beneath her seat, ready to face whatever horror awaited her. The pod door hissed open. Standing before her was a tall, reptilian being with emerald scales and 4 yellow eyes that blinked in sequence. "You are injured," the creature said in surprisingly good English. "Come. Our medical bay can treat you." Alice kept her pistol raised. "Who are you? Why should I trust you?" The alien made a gesture that might have been a shrug. "I am Captain Zoltak of the merchant vessel Riverwind. And you need not trust me, human, but you will die in that pod within 6 hours. Your choice is simple." Pain shot through Alice's leg as she tried to stand. Looking down, she saw a piece of metal embedded in her thigh. With a grunt, she holstered her weapon and allowed the alien to help her from the pod. The ship was warm, almost uncomfortably so, with corridors designed for beings larger than humans. Strange smells filled the air, spices and oils Alice couldn't identify. The medical bay was equally alien, with gel-filled beds instead of traditional ones. As alien devices worked to heal her wounds, Zoltak explained what had happened. The Galactic Empire has been planning this for months. They claimed human ships attacked 3 Imperial outposts near the Cygnus Arm. "That's impossible," Alice protested. "We barely have ships that can reach our own Mars colony. We certainly don't have vessels that could reach Imperial territory." "Of course not." Zoltak's scales rippled in what Alice would later learn was their version of nodding. The attacks were carried out by Imperial ships disguised with human markings, a deception to justify what comes next. Which is what? The Senate votes in 3 days on whether to classify humans as a dangerous species requiring containment. It is their term for invasion and resource acquisition. Alice struggled to sit up. "We need to warn Earth. Your world is too far, and Imperial ships are blocking all routes. But there may be another way." Zoltak paused, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly. "The Senate must hear the truth." "How can I possibly reach the Senate?" Alice asked. "I don't even know where it is." "The Imperial core world of Centrum Prime. The heart of galactic civilization. I can get you there, though it means risking my ship and crew." "Why would you help me?" "Your people must be part of this empire. The Varric are reluctant allies, forced to join centuries ago. Many of us remember freedom." Zoltak pointed to scars running down his neck. "Some of us bear the marks of Imperial persuasion techniques." As Alice's wounds closed under the influence of advanced medicines, she made her decision. She would not allow Earth to fall victim to Imperial lies. Somehow, she would reach this Senate and reveal the truth. "Take me to Centrum Prime, Captain. The fate of my species depends on it." Zoltak made a sound like stones grinding together. A Varric laugh. "You humans truly are as stubborn as the rumors say." "Very well, Commander Ward. We depart immediately." The merchant ship slipped away into the darkness of space, carrying Earth's only hope toward the heart of an empire that already considered humanity its enemy. The river wind traveled for 3 days through what Zoltak called shadow routes, paths through space known only to smugglers and those who wished to avoid Imperial patrols. Alice spent the time learning about the Empire, the Senate, and the thousands of alien species that made up galactic society. "We cannot simply walk into the Senate," Zoltak explained, as they shared a meal in the ship's galley. The food was strange. Purple cubes that tasted like beef and orange liquid that burned Alice's throat but gave her energy. "As a human, you would be arrested immediately." "Then how do we get in?" Alice asked. "We need help from someone who knows the system well. Fortunately, I know just the being." The ship docked at a space station that looked like a giant metal mushroom. Hundreds of vessels of different shapes and sizes were attached to its curved surface. Inside, aliens of all descriptions moved through crowded markets. Some floated in the air, others slithered on many legs, and some Alice couldn't even tell which end was the front. Zoltak led her to a dimly lit bar where the air was thick with sweet-smelling smoke. In the corner sat a figure wearing a dark hood. As they approached, the figure looked up, and Alice gasped. It was a human face, tanned and weathered, with a scar running across one cheek. "Alice Ward, meet Joe Martinez," Zoltak said. Joe studied her with careful eyes. "So you're the human causing all the trouble." His voice was rough, as if he didn't use it often. "You're human," Alice said, unable to hide her surprise. "How are you here?" "Pirates took me from a fishing boat off the coast of Florida when I was 10. Been out here for 20 years now." Joe gestured for them to sit. "The galaxy's a big place. Plenty of places for a human to hide if they know how." Alice told him about the attack on the handshake and the Empire's plans for Earth. Joe listened without interruption, occasionally taking sips from a glowing blue drink. "Getting into the Senate won't be easy," he finally said, "but it can be done. I've smuggled goods in and out of Centrum Prime for years. The real problem will be getting people to listen once you're there." "I have evidence," Alice said, pulling out a small data chip from her pocket. "The handshake recorded everything before it was destroyed." Joe nodded slowly. "That helps. But we'll need more than just the 3 of us." As if on cue, 2 figures approached their table. One was a human woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. The other was a short alien with 4 arms and skin that changed colors like a chameleon. "This is Lydia Bell," Joe said, introducing the woman. "Anthropologist. Got stranded out here 5 years ago when relations with Earth were cut." Lydia shook Alice's hand firmly. "When Joe told me another human was here, I had to come. Earth needs us." "And this," Joe continued, pointing to the 4-armed alien, "is Krev, Vest-Tech specialist in 3 systems." Krev's skin turned a friendly shade of blue. "Your species makes interesting music. I have collected many Earth songs. I would like to visit someday." Alice felt hope for the first time since the attack. "There's one more person we need," Joe said. "Molzer will meet us on Centrum Prime. Former Imperial intelligence. Got kicked out for having a conscience. They spent hours planning." Joe knew a cargo ship that would take them to the Imperial core. Lydia had studied the Senate procedures and knew when the vote on humanity would happen. Krev could forge the identification they would need. "It's almost certainly a suicide mission," Joe warned as they finalized their plan. "The Emperor doesn't forgive those who challenge him." Alice thought of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests, of cities full of people who had no idea the danger they were in, people who still thought they were alone in the universe. "Some things are worth dying for," she said. Joe smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. "Maybe you're right." He raised his glass. "To Earth." The others joined the toast, and Alice felt a strange sense of belonging with these unlikely allies, united in their desperate mission to save humanity. The cargo ship broke through the clouds of Centrum Prime, revealing a world that took Alice's breath away. Giant towers of crystal and metal stretched beyond the clouds. Flying vehicles moved in perfect lines between the buildings. The whole planet seemed to glow with its own light. "Welcome to the heart of the Empire," Joe said, standing beside her at the viewing window. "Home to over 50 billion beings from 10,000 worlds." Alice felt very small. Earth's biggest cities were like tiny villages compared to this. "How will we ever find our way around this place?" "I've been here 17 times, Joe replied. "Always illegally, of course. The trick is to act like you belong." They landed at a busy spaceport on the edge of the capital city. Krev had forged their identification papers perfectly. Alice was now Anna Vex, diplomatic aide to a minor representative from the Outer Rim. Joe was her security officer. Lydia posed as a cultural attaché. Zoltak had to stay with his ship, as Varric were closely monitored on the Imperial core. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin met them outside the port. It had a long neck and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. "This is Molzer," Joe introduced, former Imperial intelligence officer. Molzer bowed slightly. "We must hurry. The Senate session begins tomorrow, and security is tighter than normal." "Why?" Alice asked as they boarded a floating transport. "Emperor Jakril himself will attend," Molzer said, voice dropping to a whisper even though they were alone in the transport. "He rarely appears in public. He must consider the human issue very important." They traveled through the massive city. Alice saw aliens of every shape and color imaginable. Some moved through water tubes built into the walls. Others flew between platforms high above. The scale of alien civilization made her dizzy. "The Empire has stood for 12,000 Earth years," Molzer explained. "It controls nearly a quarter of the galaxy." "Why do they care about Earth?" Lydia asked. "We're just one small planet." Molzer's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "That is what I discovered before my dismissal from service. The official story about human aggression is a lie." The transport stopped at a tall building with windows that changed colors. Inside their rooms, Molzer showed them a small device that projected a 3D image of Earth. "Your planet has large deposits of this." The image zoomed in, showing glowing blue spots deep in Earth's crust. "Element 310. Vital for faster-than-light travel." "I've never heard of it," Alice said. "It forms only in certain conditions, usually deep in a planet's core. Earth has more than any world discovered in the last century." Now it all made sense. The Empire didn't fear humans. They wanted Earth's resources. Alice felt sick thinking about what would happen to her world if the Empire invaded. "Here is our biggest problem," Molzer continued, changing the projection to show a building shaped like a giant dome. "The Senate complex. Tomorrow morning, 10,000 representatives will vote on whether to authorize a protective quarantine of Earth." "Meaning invasion," Joe added. "Precisely. And I have discovered something worse." Molzer looked troubled. "The Empire has already moved invasion fleets into position near your solar system. The vote is just for show." Alice slammed her fist on the table. "Then we have to stop the vote. We need to show everyone the truth." The central speaker's platform would allow access to all communication channels, Krev said, skin turning a thoughtful green color. "But it is surrounded by security." "And there's one more problem," Molzer added. "The Empire has found a human willing to speak against his own kind." He showed them an image of a man in a uniform similar to Alice's. "Commander Frank Wilson will tell the Senate that Earth wants war." "That's impossible," Alice said. "I know Frank. He would never betray humanity." "Mind control technology," Molzer explained. "He is not acting of his own will." The weight of their mission grew heavier. They would need to infiltrate the most secure building on the most advanced planet in the known galaxy, all while an invasion fleet headed toward Earth. Morning on Centrum Prime came with light from 3 suns rising one after another. Alice dressed in the formal robes Molzer had provided, flowing fabric in deep blue with silver trim, marking her as a diplomatic aide. The outfit felt strange after days in her Earth uniform, but it would help her blend in. The Senate dome was even more impressive up close. It was made of a material that seemed solid and transparent at the same time. Alice could see thousands of beings moving inside, but the structure itself appeared strong as stone. "Remember your story," Molzer instructed as they approached the entrance. "You are Anna Vex, aide to Representative Colmar of the Drexian Confederation." "What if we meet the real Colmar?" Alice asked nervously. "Impossible. The real Colmar died 3 days ago. The news has not yet spread." Scanners checked their bodies and identification as they entered. Alice's heart pounded as a security officer, a bug-like creature with multiple eyes, studied her face longer than the others. Finally, it nodded and waved her through. Inside, the Senate was a marvel of alien engineering. The main chamber was vast enough to fit several football stadiums. Floating platforms held representatives from countless worlds. Some delegates breathed special gases, others floated in liquid chambers, and some existed as pure energy contained in special devices. So many different life forms. Alice whispered to Lydia, "I never imagined." "Most humans can't conceive of the diversity of life out here," Lydia replied. "Some of these species exist in different dimensional states than we do." They found seats in the upper levels, reserved for minor representatives and their staffs. Joe positioned himself near a side entrance, ready to create a distraction if needed. Krev had slipped away to access the building's computer systems. A hush fell over the chamber as a tall figure entered through a special door. The Emperor Jakril stood nearly 9 feet tall, with skin so pale it was almost transparent. Alice could see multiple organs pulsing inside his body. A crown of glowing metal floated above his elongated head. "The living god," Molzer whispered with disgust. "Ruler of 1 trillion beings across 50,000 worlds." The Emperor raised 4 slender arms, and his voice echoed through the chamber without any visible amplification device. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Senate," he began, his voice smooth and pleasant despite his alien appearance. "We face a grave threat to our peaceful civilization." Images appeared in the air, what looked like Earth ships firing on Imperial outposts. Alice knew they were fakes, but they seemed convincing. "The species known as humans has demonstrated unusual aggression and technological development," the Emperor continued. "Their attacks on our peaceful outposts cannot be ignored." The images changed to show Earth cities, but they were edited to look dark and threatening. Military parades were shown without context. Scenes of action movies were presented as if they were real events. "Despite our attempts at peaceful contact, they have chosen violence," the Emperor said. "And now, I present a representative of Earth itself, who will confirm the danger his own kind presents." From a side entrance came a human figure in an Earth uniform. Alice's stomach turned as she recognized Frank Wilson, her former commander. His movements were stiff, his eyes glazed. "That's not right," Alice whispered. "Frank would never betray us." Frank stood before the Senate, his voice flat and emotionless. "The people of Earth reject peaceful coexistence. We seek to conquer and destroy all other life forms. The Empire is right to fear us." Angry murmurs spread through the chamber. Alice could see many representatives nodding in agreement. Therefore, the Emperor concluded, "I ask this Senate to authorize immediate containment procedures. Our fleets stand ready to neutralize this threat before it spreads." Voting devices appeared before each representative. Alice knew she had to act quickly. Once the vote began, Earth's fate would be sealed. She looked at Joe, who nodded. It was time to put their desperate plan into action. Alice moved before she could talk herself out of it. She slipped past 2 alien guards who were focused on the Emperor's speech. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The plan was simple but dangerous. Reach the central platform and show the truth before the vote. Across the chamber, Joe created the first distraction. A small explosion, harmless but loud, went off near the back entrance. Security guards rushed toward the sound. In the confusion, Alice moved down to a lower level. Communication systems accessed. came Krebs' voice through the small device in Alice's ear. The four-armed alien had successfully hacked into the Senate's systems from a maintenance room. "Ready with the real footage?" Alice whispered. "Yes. Just reached the central terminal." Lydia was causing the second distraction now, pretending to faint in the middle of a crowded aisle. Several representatives and their aides gathered around her, blocking the path of more guards. The vote countdown had begun. Numbers flashed in the air. 60, 59, 58. Alice ran down the final set of stairs, no longer trying to be subtle. A guard spotted her and shouted, but she was faster. She jumped over a railing and landed on the speaking platform, just 10 feet from where Frank Wilson stood like a puppet. "This is a lie," she shouted, her voice suddenly amplified through the Senate systems. Krev had given her access to the microphones. "I am Commander Alice Ward of Earth, and everything you've heard today is false." The Emperor's guards rushed toward her, weapons drawn. But Joe appeared from nowhere, tackling two of them. Molzer had disabled the others' communication devices, leaving them confused and uncoordinated. "The Empire attacked us without provocation," Alice continued, speaking rapidly before she could be silenced. "They destroyed our diplomatic vessel. They want Earth for its resources, not because we're dangerous." "Silence her," the Emperor ordered, his calm facade cracking. Alice plugged the data chip into the central terminal. "This is the truth. See for yourselves." The giant screens that floated above the Senate floor suddenly showed new images. The handshake being destroyed without warning. Imperial ships disguised with fake Earth markings attacking their own outposts. Secret Imperial communications discussing Element 310 on Earth. And finally, peaceful scenes of Earth, schools, parks, families, the true face of humanity. Gasps and angry shouts echoed through the chamber. Many representatives stood up, demanding explanations. The Emperor's voice boomed across the hall. "This is human trickery. Their primitive minds cannot comprehend the complexities of galactic politics." But Alice wasn't done. She moved to where Frank Wilson stood and removed a small device attached to the back of his neck. Immediately, his eyes cleared and he looked around in confusion. "Commander Wilson," Alice said loudly, "tell the Senate what really happened when your ship met Imperial forces." Frank's voice shook but grew stronger with each word. "We were on a peaceful mission. We sent greeting messages in all known formats. The Imperial ships opened fire without responding. They took me prisoner and did something to my mind." The Senate erupted in chaos. Several representatives of species that had suffered similar treatment by the Empire began shouting accusations. Others demanded immediate investigations. The Emperor raised all four of his arms, trying to regain control. "The vote will continue. Security, remove these humans immediately." A new wave of guards entered, these wearing the Emperor's personal colors. Alice knew they wouldn't hesitate to kill her. She looked desperately at Joe, who nodded toward a side exit. They had done all they could. Maybe it was time to run. But then she saw something that made her pause. Several of the older Senate representatives were standing, pointing at ancient symbols carved into the Senate walls. They were invoking some kind of ancient protocol. The voting countdown had stopped. Alice didn't understand what was happening, but she knew one thing with perfect clarity. She wasn't finished with Emperor Jakril yet. The Emperor moved with shocking speed for his tall frame. He leaped from his platform and rushed toward an exit, his guards forming a protective circle around him. Alice knew if he escaped, he would still order the attack on Earth regardless of what the Senate decided. "He's running," she shouted to Joe, who was fighting off two more security guards. "Go after him," Joe called back. "We'll hold them here." Alice sprinted after the Emperor's retreating form. The hallway beyond the main chamber was wide and ornate, lined with statues of past Imperial rulers. She pushed past confused Senate staff and dodged more guards. Ahead, she could see the Emperor's entourage turning down another corridor. "Krev, where does that passage lead?" she asked into her communication device. "The Imperial Ceremonial Hall," came the reply. "A dead end. He must be heading for the private shuttle bay beyond it." Alice ran faster than she ever had before. Her military training on Earth had prepared her for combat, but she had never faced stakes this high. The fate of her entire species depended on stopping one being. She reached the ceremonial hall just as the Emperor was crossing it. The room was massive, with a ceiling that seemed to show the entire galaxy in motion. Golden pillars supported walls covered in the history of the Empire, all its conquests and glories. "Emperor Jacril," Alice shouted. Her voice echoed in the vast space. The Emperor turned slowly. His guards raised their weapons, but he gestured for them to lower them. "Leave us," he commanded in his smooth voice. The guards hesitated but obeyed, moving to the far side of the hall. "Impressive, for a primitive species," the Emperor said, studying Alice. "You've caused quite a disruption to my careful plans. Your plans to invade my world and steal our resources," Alice replied, walking closer. "To murder billions of innocent people." The Emperor's translucent skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "Resources are merely allocated to those advanced enough to use them properly. Your kind would waste element 310 on crude devices and petty wars. That's not your decision to make. Everything in this galaxy is mine to decide," the Emperor hissed, his calm facade breaking. "I have ruled for 3 of your human centuries. I have overseen the conquest of 1,000 worlds. Your pathetic planet is nothing." Alice realized with horror that the Emperor wasn't just speaking for effect. He truly believed himself a god among lesser beings. "The cleansing fleet is already approaching your solar system," the Emperor continued. "Nothing the Senate decides matters now. Earth will be mine before the next cycle begins." Alice felt cold fear grip her heart. "Call them off. Now." The Emperor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Or what, human? You have no power here." Without warning, the Emperor's arm extended, revealing the hidden energy weapon. The blue beam shot past Alice's head, burning her cheek. She rolled to the side as another shot hit the floor where she had stood. "I don't usually dirty my hands with combat," the Emperor said, advancing on her. "But for you, I'll make an exception." Alice looked around desperately for a weapon. She grabbed a ceremonial staff from a nearby display and used it to deflect the next energy beam. "Your primitive reflexes are impressive," the Emperor noted, firing again and again. But Q-Pow. One shot hit Alice in the shoulder, sending waves of pain through her body. She fell to one knee, but didn't drop the staff. "Any final words before I end your species' brief moment in galactic history?" the Emperor asked, standing over her. Alice noticed something on the Emperor's belt, a small communication device. It had to be his direct link to the fleet approaching Earth. With a surge of desperate strength, Alice swung the staff at the Emperor's legs. He stumbled, surprised by the attack. She leaped to her feet and tackled him, both of them crashing to the floor. "This is for Earth," she growled, as they began to struggle across the polished floor of the ceremonial hall. The Emperor was stronger than he looked. His thin arms had the power of steel cables, and his height gave him leverage. He flipped Alice over, trying to pin her down. She twisted away, rolling across the smooth floor of the ceremonial hall. "Your species is so fragile," the Emperor hissed, his transparent skin now flushed with angry colors. "So easy to break." Alice dodged another grab and landed a solid punch to the Emperor's midsection. He grunted in pain, the first sign that he could be hurt like any other being. Unknown to them both, Lydia had hacked into the security cameras. Their fight was now broadcasting to every screen in the Senate chamber. Thousands of representatives watched in shock as their living god fought a human woman. The Emperor's energy weapon had fallen during their struggle. Alice dove for it, but the Emperor kicked it away and caught her with a powerful blow to the ribs. Pain exploded through her side. She was certain something had broken. "I have lived for 300 years, the Emperor snarled, lifting Alice by her throat. I will live for 300 more. Your world will be just another forgotten conquest." Alice couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her vision. With her last strength, she kicked out, catching the Emperor in his knee joint. There was a crack, and he screamed, dropping her. Both of them fell to the floor, gasping for air. The Emperor crawled toward his communication device, which had fallen from his belt. Alice knew if he reached it, he could still order Earth's destruction. With a desperate lunge, she grabbed his ankle. The Emperor turned, rage distorting his elegant features. He struck her across the face with his fist. Blood filled Alice's mouth, but she held on. "You cannot win," the Emperor spat. "I am the ruler of 1,000,000,000,000 beings. You are nothing." Alice remembered her home, the forests where she had played as a child, the ocean she had swum in. The cities full of people who had no idea that their fate was being decided in this moment, on a world they didn't know existed. "I am humanity," Alice whispered. Then louder, "And we will know it be conquered." She pulled the Emperor toward her and smashed her forehead into his face. His skin, so delicate despite his strength, split open. Blue blood sprayed from his nose. Before he could recover, Alice grabbed the back of his ornate robe and shoved him face first into the polished floor. The sound of his face hitting the stone echoed through the hall. She did it again and again. The Emperor's environmental helmet cracked. The special air mixture he breathed hissed out. He gasped and clawed at his throat. Alice grabbed the communication device from the floor. "Call off the fleet," she demanded. "Now." The Emperor looked up at her with hatred, but also with something new: fear. He tapped a sequence on the device with shaking fingers. "Fleet Commander. Abort mission. Return to base immediately." A voice responded. "By your command, Emperor." The doors to the hall burst open. Senate guards, representatives from a dozen worlds, and Alice's friends rushed in. Joe reached her first, helping her to stand. Her whole body ached, but she had never felt more alive. An ancient alien with skin like tree bark approached. "The challenge of leadership has been witnessed," it announced in a creaking voice. "According to the oldest laws of the Empire, this human has the right to make demands of the defeated ruler." Alice didn't understand, but she saw the shock on the Emperor's bloodied face. This meant something important. "I demand peace with Earth," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent hall. "I demand recognition of humanity as a free species with the right to join galactic society on our own terms." The ancient alien nodded. "It shall be so." Later, as healers tended to her wounds, Alice watched through a window as ships departed to spread the news across the galaxy. The mighty empire had fractured. Many systems were declaring independence. Others were forming new alliances. And on a small blue planet, people were about to learn they were not alone in the universe. "What happens now?" Joe asked, sitting beside her. Alice smiled through her pain. "Now we go home. And then, the stars."